Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, with the pressure mounting on Dominic Raab, I'd like to discuss just how much of a headache it might be for Sunak to have to sack him, as sack him he must, when the investigation is over. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, towards the end of Liz Truss's brief period of cosplaying a Prime Minister, her opponents were in the process of cutting her off from her main support. Truss had initially removed her Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng, and replaced him with Jeremy Hunt, a Chancellor as far removed from her economic policies as it's possible to find in the Tory party. When Braverman was sacked, she was then replaced by Grant Shapps, someone that Truss had taken particular pleasure in sticking two fingers up at over his refusal to back her in the leadership contest. In fact, she ran a campaign basically when she became Prime Minister of making it clear she was going to punish people who refused to back her. So she'd replaced two of her three most senior cabinet ministers with people who'd backed Rishi Sunak throughout the leadership contest. There was no jumping ship for Hunt or Grant Shapps towards the end. Had she not collapsed over the fracking vote a few days later and limped on a few weeks more, it's likely that her opponents in the parliamentary party would have sought to replace other key positions in cabinet as well. You know, she was being slowly consigned to the role of puppet Prime Minister while her allies were banished to the backbenchers and replaced by those close to the one who had the most support amongst Conservative MPs, Rishi Sunak. With Dominic Raab facing the sack sooner or later, you can see a similar process occurring here. Not quite the same. There aren't enough of Sunak's opponents in Parliament to oust Sunak's allies and get their own preferred candidates in, you know, as happened with Truss. But they can help topple his allies at least. You know, first of all, there was Gavin Williamson. He was forced to resign over a bullying scandal. Nadeem Zahawi, now he's not closely aligned with Sunak particularly, but he's a loyal and useful supporter to whoever is the Tory leader. You know, he was quite happy to be useful for Boris Johnson in return for political power. He was quite happy. He backed Liz Truss. He was quite happy to support her in return for power. And he was quite happy to support Sunak in return for power. He's essentially seen by the Tories as a useful ally to whoever is the leader without having any particular loyalties. So his loss is Sunak's loss either way. Raab is particularly interesting though. Dominic Raab backed Rishi Sunak right from the start of the summer leadership campaign. And it's also, seems to me, undeniable that Raab is an influential figure in the parliamentary party. I don't know how. How is it possible for a significant number of Tory MPs to consider this vacuous oaf to be a leader for them? It's quite beyond me. But it must be the case because, first of all, so Johnson made Raab Foreign Secretary when he became Prime Minister. Raab also became his deputy. Now that suggests a certain gravitas on Raab's part. You know, Johnson made Priti Patel Home Secretary for a particular purpose. You could see why he made her Home Secretary. There was a practical use for him. There was nothing he especially needed Raab to do at the Foreign Office. It was just a very senior role and therefore a nice little reward for someone seen as a powerful ally. But after the fall of Kabul, Raab had to be sacked. Had to be. It's a very damaging scandal. But Raab refused to go. Johnson was forced to simply demote him to Justice Secretary, where Raab could then be entertained by attacking the European Court of Human Rights. But he still retained his Deputy Prime Minister title. That Johnson couldn't just sack him meant that Raab was too powerful to be jettisoned unilaterally, because Johnson tried to actually sack him. But Raab kicked up a fuss and got his way. Which brings me to the current scandal. Now, it's quite clear that Sunak's opponents want Raab gone. Raab is a close ally of Sunak. For a start, ask yourself why the bullying scandal surrounding Raab only came to light in the public when Sunak became Prime Minister. Raab's alleged bullying seems to have been well known for the Tories for years. Why did it all come out when Sunak became Prime Minister? According to a report in the Times, formal allegations, formal complaints were submitted earlier last year, around about April, I think it said. That was while Boris Johnson was Prime Minister. Why didn't it come out in the 6 months between then and Sunak becoming Prime Minister? It came to public prominence as a result of Sunak's opponents leaking it to the media, I suspect. And if that is the case, That would suggest that there will be a lot of briefing against Sunak's judgment from his opponents in the Tory party when the investigation is concluded, whenever that happens to be, and Raab is dismissed. Sunak's already facing pressure to explain exactly what he knew about Zahawi's tax scandal before making him a cabinet minister. Well, the Times has reported that the cabinet secretary, Simon Case, knew about Raab's bullying before Sunak reappointed him when he became prime minister. That Raab was undergoing a formal complaints process. It's inconceivable that Case would not have shared this information with Sunak. Rishi Sunak keeps insisting all the normal procedures were followed when appointing his cabinet ministers. Well, the normal procedures include receiving advice from senior officials about issues which may create a conflict of interest or cause embarrassment to the government, should certain information be made public. Like, for example, formal complaints of bullying. So attention will inevitably turn to what Sunak knew about the bullying before appointing him when all this comes to a head. And even if Sunak can persuade people that there's enough element of doubt in each individual case, just consider what's about to happen. I say about to happen, it could still be weeks away. But when Raab goes, and goes he has to, it'll be put to Sunak that in just a few months since becoming Prime Minister, he'll have sacked 2 senior members of the government for bullying, another for not handling his taxes properly, and in all likelihood he must have known about all of these issues when he appointed them. He will also have reappointed a Home Secretary who was sacked for threatening national security less than a week beforehand. And that was all over the media, so no way of denying knowledge of that. At the very least, it's not a track record of good judgment designed to give you confidence that Sunak has filled the rest of his government with suitable ministers or that his judgment on other matters will be sound. But that wouldn't be the end of Sunak's troubles. See, when it comes time to tell Raab he has to go, one of two things will happen. First, Raab kicks against it, just as he did with Johnson. What if Raab doesn't feel that he should go? After all, Sunak was found guilty of breaking the law as both Chancellor and Prime Minister and hasn't resigned over the matter in either case. What if Raab is sufficiently indignant about the perceived injustice that he threatens to launch a briefing war against Sunak the second he's no longer in government? In fact, maybe Sunak's opponents are actively hoping for this act of petulance. The second possibility is that Raab is a good little boy, that he is a genuine ally of Sunak, he sees the writing on the wall, he agrees to resign in order to support the government, whilst continuing to deny he did anything wrong, of course, which will be why he won't resign beforehand. Whining lefty lawyers and all that, you know. If this happens, in stark contrast to his behaviour with Johnson, it would suggest that Raab really does support Sunak, in which case Sunak will have lost a powerful and valuable ally from his side. It will be a win-win for his opponents, whatever happens, because they will have weakened his cabinet. All part of the circling into positions ahead of a showdown later this year. Possibly after the local elections, or maybe they'll wait till the first anniversary of him becoming Prime Minister, when he will be more vulnerable to a confidence vote. When Raab is dismissed, if you look at the timeline of Sunak's time in office, it will look like he is becoming ever more isolated in cabinet. Because most of his cabinet picks, unlike with Johnson picks cabinet ministers who would be fanatically loyal to him. Liz Truss picks them because they'd be fanatically loyal to her policies. Sunak tried to pick a mixture. So most of his cabinet are not actually his close allies. They're ministers that were included in order to represent the various factions of the party that he was trying to bind together. Braverman was almost certainly included as a bargaining chip for ERG support, but she remains an open wound for his claims of governing with integrity. Raab's exit from cabinet, however it happens, is likely to be a massive blow for Sunak, albeit one that he must have come to terms with by now, because it's clearly going to happen. But how big a blow, of course, depends on how compliant Raab is about it all. But Sunak's opponents, whether it's Boris Johnson supporters or Liz Truss supporters, are very clearly working on a strategy of gradually chipping away at the Prime Minister's authority in order to bring about his downfall. You know, having had to sack 2 very close allies for bullying and lose another one who was at least useful to him in cabinet, that will be seen as good progress towards that end. It's increasingly difficult to see Sunak successfully avoiding showdowns within the Tory party, not least because neither he nor his paid advisers seem to have any political acumen at all. In fact, Sunak's only defence right now, his only decent pick, is that of his chief whip, Simon Hart, who is actually reported to be doing a very good job of acting as that conduit between the government and backbenchers. But I doubt it'll be enough. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.